I want to welcome Agile XRM to the podcast. I've known the people at Agile XRM for the past 12 years. I've seen how their business process management tool can add massive value to complex organizational processes in sectors such as finance and government. If you have complex processes or a need for dialogues on the Power Platform or Dynamics 365, take a look at how this BPM tool can add value. You can find them at agilexrm.com or check out the show notes for more details. Welcome to the MVP Show. My intention is that you listen to the stories of these MVP guests and are inspired to become an MVP and bring value to the world through your skills. If you have not checked it out already, I do a YouTube series called How to Become an MVP. The link is in the show notes. With that, let's get on with the show. Today's guest is from California in the United States. He works at Own Backup as a principal solution engineer. He was first awarded an MVP in 2022. You can find links to his bio, social media, etc. in the show notes for this episode. Alan, welcome to the show.
Hey, Mark. It's great to connect and appreciate you having me on.
Before we get started, I always like to find out a bit about my guests. And of course, you're from sunny California. Tell me a bit about food, family, and fun. What does that mean to you when you're not working?
Well, food is the spice of life for me. So coming from a Filipino American family, love the Asian food, but then married to a Indian woman, I get the blessings of all the great Indian foods as well. So constantly cooking, constantly eating. It is my downtime in the kitchen. So I like to explore and have fun there. I think it keeps me sane to some extent. So food is everything. Family is even more. And fun is, at this point in career and life, fun is getting a chance to disconnect and to not have electrical devices so that I can spend some time in the kitchen cooking or some time in the yard gardening or just out running or whatever it might be.
I love it. I love it. And how's things in California at the moment? We've seen so much crazy stuff in the news over the past year. What's it like living there at the moment?
It is springtime, so things are coming from brown into green. It's actually quite lush and beautiful. Here in Northern California, we've recently had some storms. So we're getting some rainfall before the hot season hits. So it's actually nice. It's a beautiful time. It's a rebirth that we get to see here that I grew up here. So this is the most comfortable place I can be.
I love it. I love it. What was your journey into technology? And step us through from kind of the inception through right up to your involvement in the everything Microsoft business applications. What's that for you?
That's a long story. I started way back in '94, and I started with hardware. I started as just a person selling hardware. The world was simple. We had, PCs were an extravagance in the home, and they were becoming mainstream in the business. And, we had Dell Gateway and Micron, and I was at one of the big three. So it was nice. It was interesting to me. I got my degree in English, so I was expecting the wonderful world of creativity and academia was what my expectations were in a career. But to make ends meet, I landed in technology. So it was quite fun. I went from hardware into networking because once I sold to businesses, I had to understand the networks. And then we went into the dot-com explosion happened. So, we went into this world of data centers and hosting and all of this stuff. So it kind of forced me into the world of software. And so then I moved into a company where I went to an ISV, and I had to learn the database side of things, which was quite the shock for a hardware guy with an English degree. but it was great because it took me down this path of of self-learning where I had to teach myself how to write code. I had to teach myself, what the best practices were, what to do, what not to do. And language after language, what I found was that the English degree helped because it's entirely about syntax. It's entirely about how you use those verbs. So it was it was an interesting progression, and found myself at Microsoft not so long ago, and it was, I think, maybe the best company I could have ever been at in my career. Um, so yeah, that's how I got here. I was a hardware sales guy who ended up learning how to do the software stuff along the way.
How did you get into the Power Platform?
Funny thing is I actually was a gold mine administrator at one of my companies, and we had this thing back in the day that the partner community had called an action pack subscription, which gave us
I remember
every month we'd get a box full of CDs.
Yeah, I remember those CDs going through. Oh, what can we try?
And those must have a little bit of a type A personality like me. I cataloged them, and so alphabetized and cataloged. And I found this one, Microsoft CRM 1.0, and I said, hey, I wonder if that's anything like Goldmine. And so I popped it in, and I learned everything I had to learn to support it in the stack, put it up together in a lab, and we replaced Goldmine. We had Goldmine plus Heat for sales and service, and we replaced it with one SKU. And it was just so amazing to me on 1.0 that I bet my entire career on CRM 1.0.
Is that 20 years ago?
That was 20 years ago this year.
I know it because I started on 1.2.
Yeah,
which was just November of that year.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, that was the entry point for the and I'll use air quotes here since this is just audio, beloved Outlook client that we that we had to go a long road down before we got the goodness of server-side sync.
Wow. So that's an interesting path, and I didn't even realize. So you were 6 years in Microsoft.
Yeah, 6 years there. Again, best company in the world. I would go back out of retirement to go be with the people there because the minds and the spirit is incredible.
Incredible. But you spent the last year at Own Backup, and I find that very interesting. So it's obviously a SaaS provider of some sort.
Yeah, so what we're doing at Own Backup is we're providing backup and recovery services as a core service for key SaaS providers. So we started out 8 years ago on the Salesforce platform. For those of you who don't know, Salesforce really has no backup and recovery option, just a bunch of CSV files. And so that's where the company started. But we came to a point where we were hearing the demands from the market across other platforms like Dynamics, like ServiceNow, and some others. And so I came on board to help us launch that into the Dataverse API so that we could actually provide extended backup recovery services into the platform.
Wow, that's incredible. So then how did you become an MVP? Because you came out of Microsoft and you've become an MVP very quickly. How did that work?
Well, it's funny because one of the biggest parts about our nuanced service is that there's a lot of education that needs to happen. So we did the Ignite, we did the Inspire, we did, MPCC, lots of educational stuff that we put out there, blog content, webinars, the whole 9 yards. And we're starting with like the most rudimentary of things, which is the concept of the shared responsibility model, right? So, again, for those of you who don't know the nuances there is that while Microsoft is extraordinary in all ways, that SLA is, it says that they'll keep the lights on in terms of the service availability, but the data is the onus of the customer. So, if a customer has a data corruption or data loss event, while Microsoft support is awesome and they will help you best they can, it's not contractually what they're there for. So that's a hard education to put out there, with our customer base and our community. It's tough because, we've had, a journey, we'll say, moving from the on-prem days into the cloud and now into low code, no code. It's a journey that we don't need more thorns along the way.
Yeah. It's an interesting concept. So I take it your organization, and I don't normally talk about the companies that MVPs work for, but are you saying that you back up data from Dataverse, or are you backing up data to Dataverse?
No, we actually take the backups from the Dataverse. So we're doing
Fantastic.
Snapshot. Yeah. So we do a snapshot.
Over my career, I've had many customers ask for that type of service. From about 6 years ago, I started coming across it, and of course, there wasn't an option from in the cloud, right?
And again, along this education process, we're finding that there's these compliances that that are coming through, and they're moving targets. One thing happens in the industry. I mean, shoot, this week we saw Silicon Valley Bank, and that's a big ripple in the financial services pond. So do we think that there's going to be some additional compliance that will come from it? You betcha, right? And so when those things happen and you're strapped with 7 days on a sandbox or 28 days on a production for your retention of backup, it's difficult for a customer to kind of move with the ebb and flow of compliance requirements.
So I take it was off all that content creation then that you got awarded the MVP.
Yeah, well, I think I got awarded because, being an ex-Microsoft person, when I left, these are friends for life. And so they kept in touch with me, and they heard and they saw what I was doing, and that's where the nomination came from. Obviously, it's going to be either an employee or another MVP. So, yeah. So yeah, it was, some old friends said that this message needed to get out there. And that's how we came about.
What's your involvement? Like, do you join things like the PGIs and the various bits and pieces? What part of the MVP program are you using now to benefit what you do in the day-to-day and also benefit the community?
So we're doing a handful of things. I like to get out and, I like to give the articles. I like to give the content out to the community. So I'm starting to write up, more blog posts and reusable information. Just sort of have to repeat myself a million times, right? But but we also get heavily involved with like the user group community, and I'm definitely involved in the PGI from that side of things because of the roadmap. So Dataverse has a beautiful roadmap. If you haven't talked to James Olnick recently, he's got a master plan that is, I think the customers are going to love it when it all rolls out.
Yeah, no, I had him on about towards the end of last year.
Yeah, so like they've really done some really great things investing in that, from a data platform, and like Purview is a great example, right? We're going to see that this year. What a great thing to incorporate. So I want to be involved there so that I can, help customers maximize the use of all the goodness throughout these tools, right? And at the end of the day, not worry about, oh shoot, I've got a rogue integration, or oh shoot, I've got a novice user that exported to Excel, did a bad formula and re-imported a bunch of corrupt data. Right.
I'm really interested because you're in such a unique position, being inside Microsoft and then being an MVP going back into, the connections with Microsoft. You'll have a unique view on this.
What did you understand about the MVP program when you were in Microsoft, as opposed to did anything surprise you once you became an MVP that, I didn't realize that, or I didn't realize that?
Well, I mean, I was part of Fast Track for a while, and so our engagement with the MVP community was very, very close. So in fact, the last time I saw you, I think in person, was the MVP Summit 2019.
A long time ago now. A long time ago. A different world ago.
Yeah, we were all sitting in the back room chuckling when some of our more notable folks were beaten up on the Ryan Joneses of the world and and whatnot.
Exactly. And that's our job to do, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. But one of the things that on the Fast Track team, one of the things that was a heavy lift for us was to take the community feedback and to either abstract it into something that was a broader scope and magnitude so that it could elevate in the backlog, or narrow it down to something so finite that it can then become a hotfix. And helping the product managers on Charles's team really own those instead of just saying yeah, and putting it in the meeting notes and then having the MVPs have to keep following up, right? So that was one of the things that I took a lot of pride in, was working with that group to make sure it actually hit backlog.
Nice. My last question, because we're running out of time, is that you've been in Microsoft through a very interesting period and observed, from CRM 1.0 days, a massive transition around. You had visibility through that before you joined Microsoft into what was happening with the product team. I've seen all James Phillips' predecessors, multiple of them, and over my time engagement, what was what did you see created the biggest impact over the last, let's say 6-7 years with the technologies, with it going from a 1,500 strong org to a 10,000 strong org, when it comes to headcount on Microsoft? What were the big kind of pivot points that you observed?
From a leadership perspective, I think it was really Satya just going all in. Satya had so many conversations. He was and is still known for, being, the biggest cheerleader for, the Dynamics brand and for the Power Platform. I think the chemistry between Charles and Satya is very rich. And I think that means a lot, because I think when two people can jive and have a common vision together and have the same excitement levels, that's when you see the magic happen. And so luckily, we as customers get to see that and benefit from it today, because what I think is like Charles and Satya together is a dynamic duo. They're pretty tough to stop.
I'm going to get you to speculate, and you can say, I don't want to answer this one. Everybody seems to roll over around the 3 to 4 year mark, in their team, their career progression, they got lives, etc. How long have we got them? Is he going to take over Scott Goo's role?
Yeah, so that's my desire. I mean, I've seen, and I've actually spoken with Charles many times. His technological prowess is really unrivaled, and yeah, and like if I had my druthers, he would allow Scott to retire in peace and harmony, once and for all, right? But can he do Scott's job? Without question. There's not a bone in my body that. So I would say 10 years minimum. That's what I would say.
Yeah. Interesting.
Charles, if you're listening, it's an official request.
I would hope so. Alan, it's been a pleasure talking to you. I feel like we might need to have another longer conversation on one of my other shows outside the MVP show. Thanks so much for coming on.
I love it. It's great always, Mark, to talk to you. And hopefully I'll get down there sometime. We'll get out and see each other face to face.
Hey, thanks for listening. I'm your host, Business Application MVP Mark Smith, otherwise known as the NZ365 Guy. If you like the show and want to be a supporter, check out buymeacoffee.com/NZ365 Guy. Thanks again, and see you next time.